Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this SAM Monthly Best Practice webinar. This is the 12th of the series that we started last year in July. My name is Nicolas Rousseau, and I'm Product Manager for FlexNet Manager and ITAM, so the Flexera One ITAM platform. And today will be a pleasure to go with you through what could have been the first session, actually, managing SAM operations. You know, this is giving a look on the big picture of managing software asset management with FlexNet Manager with ITAM, Flexera One ITAM. And this session, this 1 hour session, will cover step by step what you need to do in the project and in the run phase to make sure that you are successful in SAM. And you will see this is not completely straightforward, but we have we have features for that. We have everything needed to make your software asset management journey a success. And the idea that during this session, I will spend most of the time in PowerPoint, which is not very often the case. And I will give you a number of pointers. And I will basically start with the beginning, which is giving the big picture on SAM, giving the big picture on what ITAM does and how it is designed. And I will deep dive into the step-by-step activities for a software asset manager. So that said, just a little thing, you know, there are probably two tabs that you see on your side when accessing this shared session. So make sure that right now you see the agenda. You know, there is sort of a background slide. I'm sharing my screen, so this is maybe another tab for you. And I've moved to the second slide, which is the agenda. And so the agenda will be quite fast today, or quite simple. The first step will be around, checking on the last session, the pointers and the answers to questions. And there was no question, so it would be fast. Then I will quickly go through some news, updates that have been done in the Best Practice Hub. I keep showing this document, but I'm sure, and still meet a number of people who have never seen this community post, which contains a lot that can help you. And I will talk quickly about the ITAM 2022 1.6 release, which actually contains mostly bug fixes, and the coming FNMS 2022 R2.2, which is actually R2, sorry, not 2.2. This next release, which will be the next on-prem and cloud version, that will contain a number of additions. So of course, additions for the on-prem customers are more numerous than for the cloud customers, who get incremental changes every month. So I will not spend too much time because we will have one more session before this release. So I will be fast on this one and spend most of the time today on this managing operations topic. So giving you some pointers in the first steps, and then going through the context, what is SAM, what is ITAM, what is FlexNet Manager, and showing a step-by-step high-level process that can have some deep dives that I've provided during some other sessions during this SAM webinars. So you will be able to get more details for the operation phase and the run phase, and finally, the project phase and the run phase. And I will open to the coming SAM Operations Hub, which is exactly, helping being successful and the performance in the operations run phase, Just checking, if everything is all right. So I'm still sharing. Hopefully there are not questions saying that we don't hear anything. Okay, so hopefully everything is going well, and I keep going. Okay, so let's move on. let's move on with the first slide, which is about the last session. That session was on reporting, reporting in all its states, I would say, reporting in ITAM and FlexNet Manager. So you will find the recordings and the pointers in the community hub, which is a section in our community, which contains all the details of these events and webinars. So this time you see a recording, which is a 1-hour video. This video on the report was very hands-on, I would say, managing, creating reports for the web client, creating Cognos reports in many details, using the data warehouse or the snapshot data that you have in Cognos. So I would say if you want, and then I expanded to SQL reports, which is more for on-prem customers, and demoed also a little bit how to extract data with the REST API, which is a very, very important topic for cloud customers. And we had this new REST API that got released in June that transforms any report into a REST API answer. So this is a REST API called execute report, or reports execute actually. And you will get all the details in this recording. You have the details here, and you have the document that got used here, and some links to existing resources. So that was a little bit for the last session for the reporting. Let's go back to the documentation. Answers to questions, indeed, no question. So I will have more time to spend on the topic of today. So ITAM 2022 R.1.4 got released last month, and contained the named user optimization reports. So if you're a cloud customer, you should really have a look to that. So typically, if you connect to Flexera 1, if you go to the let's connect. If you go to the report section, so far so good, you will see that one section of the reports has been extending a lot and will be actually reorganized soon under a hub, what we call the SAM Optimization Hub. So you will see that here in these reports, you get, in the sub reports, you get a new report that got added in the optimization tab folder. This is called the named user optimization, named user license, consumption, and optimization. And this one is, so I demoed it several times, I will not, but you know where to find it. And when you run the report, you could eventually focus on the license if you have a very big instance of ITAM with many licenses and reports. But here you get quickly interesting view on your optimizations, typically on Adobe. This is interesting to know if you got, let's say here, for instance, this user has installed applications, Acrobat DC and Photoshop CC, good. He has a number of applications that got used recently, which is good as well. But in the end, this, customer gets a downgrade recommendation to move down to the standalone products, which are Acrobat Creative Cloud, Acrobat Reader DC and Photoshop. So I would say more Photoshop here. And you get here, so all the information that will allow to understand if there is a setting and so on. So it depends a little bit on how you have created the license, but check this report. It will be useful on very useful on Adobe, useful on Microsoft 365. Typically, if somebody just uses Visio Online, he could get the Plan 1, Visio Online Plan 1, Office for Microsoft 365, and not the Plan 2, which includes the local client. So this report will catch any downgrade, for instance, from E5 to E1, if somebody is just using the online applications. Have a look to this report. That could be very useful. That's just what I wanted to say on this new release. And then, we'll have the 2022 getting released, just for your information, in December. So current date is 12th of December 2022. You will get the on-premise version of ITAM, or FlexNet Manager on-premise, 2022 R2. That will include, all the additional feature that got released since 2022 R1. For instance, 2022 R1, sorry. For instance, this named user report, but also more things that we have added along the time. As usual, I will just give you a pointer to this SAM Best Practice Hub, which is, that's quite redundant, but I still find people who have not access to it ever. This document is very detailed and gives, in the perspective of the 3 hubs, the SAM Optimization Hub, which is something we're going to release in October, the SAM Optimization Hub, the SAM Operations Hub that we will discuss about today, because this is all about helping you in the process of managing SAM operations in the run phase, and the SAM Data Transparency Hub. You will find, in this context, in this slide, all the links. So get the links to these monthly calls, interesting, or all the recordings, everything is here, but also all the links to what we think about and what we are working on, which is, for instance, this SAM Operation Transparency Hub. I will discuss about it. You will find also the links to all the solutions that are already bringing the pieces that will be part of this hubs. And you will find some links, short practice guide on managing SAM operations. Guess what? We will talk about that today. You will find links to other reports. And in the end, you also find any other useful best practice that got released. So you will see here, this is all about, reports about transparency, inside application, transparency. This is a report we recently released, but the solution was already in the community for a while. So that's a good resource for you knowing what's happening, articulating what you need to know and how you need to approach SAM, and getting, if you're on premise, some previews of these reports that we are productizing, one by one. Just to give you, that this is not just about the future and the dreams. The last section is on this SAM Optimization Hub, and this SAM Optimization Hub is planned for October. It will contain some data that will be historized, so that you can get trends. This is a snapshot data, the total saving achieved today thanks to FlexNet and ITAM, the potential saving if you were taking action, and you will get here, all the explanations, and the data that you see here will be stored in the data warehouse so that you can get a trend. So typically, if your potential saving on Oracle is decreasing, it means that you have finally applied the recommendation of the report, which is called the Optimal Virtualization Architecture for Oracle. So it means you have moved the VMs to the specialized clusters, and this report will give you all the details. And just to show that these are things that have happened, this report got released in March this year. It was in 2022 on-prem and 2021 1.4. This SQL Server Optimization, so that was Windows Server Optimization. SQL Server Optimization got released a little bit earlier in December last year. This Red Hat was September last year. These Oracle reports got released between July and September, which allow to understand the impact of the way you have deployed your VMs and the costs, and what you should do to move to an optimal architecture. So please access this document, which keeps being updated. So just to, there were two more, additions, and on the bottom of the document, you will find, any addition that I make will be described as a news. So this is really why you should get information. just to be sure that you get the information that could be useful, we have this, newsletter that you may receive or not. If you don't receive and wish to receive it, please just post a question with your email address. Normally we have the email address already, but we will add you to the list of people who receive that. Today we have something like 2,000 or 3,000 people in the community which are receiving this newsletter. And the newsletter, of course, is insisting on the new best practice hub, on the SAM data, or the new update. So you got, here a raw evidence on computer report that gives you the details across computers or by computers of the raw evidences, and the installed application usage detail, which is quite a complicated topic. These two reports are now available in this, SAM best practice hub. Again and again, I'm re-pointing to this document that will help you. Okay, so that's about this newsletter. Yeah, check your email, check your spam. You may have this letter but you will get things about the next webinars, the last webinars as well, the released version, the released applications. You will get everything in a one-page document in the SAM best practice hub again and again. Okay, let's move on to the core topic of today, which is about managing SAM operations. So, I already went through the agenda. So today you have a number of documentations with Flexera on ITAM, which you can find in this docs.flexera.com. So interesting to know, but I guess you have this documentation center, which does not require any login. You can just access to it, and you have a number of products, and you could pick up, for instance, FlexNet Manager Suite Cloud, which is Flexera 1 ITAM. And here you will see the list of documentations, the feature by release that I often show, which is showing the releases month by month. Okay, so you have also the so if you go back to this product, you have a number of documentations which, for instance, the online help. This is the documentation you get if you're on any page. You click on the question mark, and it will be opened in the context of your page. And this documentation is very, very precise and gives a lot of information. So you have this gathering FlexNet inventory, which is giving you bits and bytes on how to set up the agents and collect the right data and eventually tune the way you want to collect data. You have this inventor agent change log that shows all the changes. So what I'm showing here is that we have a number of guides which are very useful, but which are not completely, process driven, I would say. If you are on a part of the application, let's go here. If I'm on the, let's say, all licenses screen, you will get a documentation which is giving you, so I was on the system task here, but each page has a documentation that is very precise. Each report has a documentation which is very, very helpful. So in the end, everything is documented in details, but in the context of the page where you are. So this is nice. This is useful. This is what you should access to and try to go through. But I would say in our process, in our need, which is I want to understand what to do with FlexNet Manager to start my project, my software asset management project. This will not be, I would say, process-driven enough. We have a learning center, which is another resource that you can access to if you're a customer. And this learning center contains a number of demos and training. And there is one which is called, the FlexNet Manager learning path. This is the ITAM, because we have a common practice between the cloud and the on-premise version. And you will have, many documentations or, many recorded sessions that will be accessible here, and you can register, and then you get the links to these online sessions. Okay, so that's actually the level of documentation that is helpful. There is one called, managing FlexNet operations. And to be honest, I did not find it while preparing this session, but the license creation and optimization with FlexNet Manager is, I would say, a little bit a focused one on a part of the big picture. And I'm sure that looking for a little bit more resources, you will get this bigger picture, which is an introduction to ITAM, and that's maybe this getting started with FlexNet Manager that will go through what is SAM, what is the process, and so on. Okay, so this is actually this one, which is about how to manage SAM in FlexNet Manager. Good. So you have these bit and byte documentations. You have these high-level trainings which are focused on some of the topics, and the introduction one being useful for the operations. You have another resource which is actually also in the learning center. This is called what we call the practice guide, and these guides are PDF documents which go very deep into one topic in ITAM. So there is actually a document. You need to register basically, but once you are registered, you can download the PDF document. These documents have, sometimes they may need a refresh, or they have been created I would say some years ago sometimes. So that's, but each document is deep diving into, a topic. I will show you, for instance, let's say a practice guide. Okay, so if I go to a practice guide, you will see that this is a comprehensive document. For the Oracle Practice Guide, for instance. And you see here, this is a document that got written by, consulting services, so experts. Oh, I was here, but more people made additional, made more contributions, and you will see it's really a step-by-step explanation, very deep dive on Oracle, and you get, the full stack. And when I was saying, for instance, that the, these reports talk about, this document talks about possible optimization reports, that in the end, all these reports have been released. So I guess, it would be good. It's good to keep in mind that these optimizations are now part of the product. Okay, so that's another level of documents that I guess will be useful in the light of a specific vendor, and that may be a little bit deep. This is not the 30,000 feet, documentation. And just for fun, I mentioned the two nice operation summary guides and FNMS operations, which are very old documents. But I would say these were called, officially FlexNet operations. And these documents were actually very, very big. So if I open this one, FNMS operation guide, it was a 1,500 page, the 800 page, which was, going bit and bytes about, how to manage everything. So I would say this one was nice, but honestly, it was a little bit too detailed, and we decided to move a step up in terms of details. So the details are more in the existing documentations, the reference guide, system reference guide, and so on. But okay, so all of this to say that what we are doing today and what we are going to go through is I would say, an introduction level of managing SAM operations. And actually, just to the last link in this document is on this document that got released in April, I think, which is containing what I'm going to use today for this session. So this is a document which is called, short practice guide. It's not 50 pages on Oracle or 60 pages on IBM. It's a short practice guide that gives an introduction to how to manage processes and so on. And you get two documents attached to it. One is about the SAM operations guide, and the other is about managing unrecognized applications. So that's the last pointer, but the goal is to show you that, depending on your, I would say, maturity or the level you are, you can go either to the higher level, this document, or the, trainings, or at the bit and bytes level, these documentations, on setting up inventory settings for the agents are, 2,000 pages, or there is a connector documentation. You have extremely high level of details in these documentations. Let's move on. The context. Oops. Let's move on with the context. Sorry. So the context is that, software asset management is, I would say, a subset of the application lifecycle management. A typical, classical and very old, actually, chart of this process is that you manage, a request to an application. This request, let's say I want project because I'm doing project management, will be approved. Eventually, the license would be purchased or reallocated if you had some spare licenses for project. You will deploy the application, you will manage, eventually upgrade, and finally retire the application if the user leaves the company or moves to a position where it doesn't need project anymore. And SAM, Software Asset Management, is a subset of this, which is focusing on inventory, purchase and entitlement management and contract management, and software license reconciliation, which is the compliance step. So basically, when you think about what a software asset manager does in ITAM, is managing, but we have, Flexera has a piece where you can request, approve, and deploy. This is called the app broker. This is not exactly, the ITAM or the FlexNet Manager part, but this is a solution we have. But the solution that just consists in managing software asset management is about making sure that we reflect what got purchased, making sure that we collect what got deployed, making sure that we understand the related license data, which goes beyond actually the application lifecycle management, and making sure that the compliance we have, we are not basically under-consuming or over-consuming the licenses, because if we under-consume, that's also a cost to have some shelfware. So, and I will spend time introducing a little bit the concept, and maybe for you it would be, at I would say too basic level, but and then I will give the big picture of the process which is needed to be successful managing software asset management. So, one slide of I would say architecture, and this is FlexNet on-premise, but ITAM Cloud has the same type of architecture, except that the database and the application server are hosted by Flexera, or by a vendor which is supporting Flexera cloud architecture. And the architecture is quite simple. You have some devices that eventually get some agents. You could use CCM, for instance, for your desktops, or the FlexNet agent for your servers. These agent NDI files will go through beacons, which are sort of a network in your local area network that are able to collect the data coming from the agents and transmit it down up to the application server, or the inventory server, actually. And then you have, depending on how you have deployed ITAM on-premise or FlexNet on-premise, you have a batch server, an inventory server, and an application server, which will manage the web connection. So these 1, 2, or 3 servers, which have the stacks of processing the files and getting the files, processing the files, and giving a UI to the users, will interact with the database, which contains a number of databases actually. You have an inventory manager database, which is the sort of inventory layer. You have a FlexNet Manager or FNMS compliance database, which is storing the data related to contracts, inventory, license consumption. And we have this FNMP snapshot or FNMS snapshot, which is containing basically the cache data of the reports when you run them to have better performance. And finally, we have these 2 stores, so the data warehouse and the content store, which are managing the data, the Cognos data, and the historized information. So let's note that the data warehouse could be used by reports which are not Cognos reports. This is what will happen with the SAM Optimization Hub I described earlier. So this is all about having the right place to store the right data and then giving an access to the users. The technology is very Microsoft oriented, so IIS, SQL Server for the database, and this is a big picture on the architecture of the tool. Another big picture is how does Flexera 1 ITAM or FlexNet Cloud both actually work the same way? How does it integrate with the ecosystem? So we have these beacons that, on one side are transmitting the inventory files. On the other side, these beacons are able to do passive or active inventory, so they can actually connect to external sources such as SCCM, and they will be basically the entry points for any third-party tool data into the IT asset management database, so that you can get the data not only from the inventory, but also from other sources of inventory and HR data. Typically, Active Directory is a very important out-of-the-box integration. Each beacon is collecting the list of active users with their SAM account name, and all the data will be in the database. Just to take a step back, I'm talking about FlexNet Manager on premise or ITAM. We need to take a step back and think about the overall Flexera 1 cloud platform, which is including ITAM, that includes a SaaS manager that will collect the data from the SaaS application, that includes all these IT asset management stack, which is managing inventory, compliance, and contracts, and purchase. And we have more stacks, a broader view and a broader set of processes with IT visibility, which gives the sort of a universal normalization, including the application recognition library normalization, that will contain the normalization for hardware and software and all the lifecycle management data for applications. And we have this cloud optimization stack, which is part of Flexera 1, which includes the ability to support data for the cloud migrations and support data for managing on a day-to-day basis the cloud optimization, so cloud inventory and cloud optimization for all your cloud-related architectures. This Flexera 1, I'm just stressing a little bit the architecture on Flexera 1, but if you have the data here, let's go one step up. It's probably that you got some beacons that reported data into the ITAM part of Flexera 1. Flexera 1 has a reporting engine and a policy engine, which allows to automate, makes automations, and the data for each of these stacks is available through REST APIs, including ITAM data, which can now be accessed through any REST API call for any object created and exposed in a report. So I'm moving forward, just to give you a little bit of view on the I would say, functional view of the tool. We have a number of processes which are displayed that way in on-premise, but are displayed nearly the same way in the cloud, which is managing license, hardware state, discovery, procurement, and the enterprise groups. And there are a number of, Perl, product use right library, that we call, which you get. So there is a big Perl, which is a server Perl, including the management for Microsoft. Actually, Adobe should not be here. It should be in the desktops, IBM, Oracle, VMware. And you have the desktop Perl, which is containing the data typically for Adobe, Microsoft Desktop, and any desktop applications. So I'm going fast, but that was a little bit of functional. And what do we do when we do software asset management? It's quite simple. The big picture, 30,000 feet picture, it's quite simple. On one side, you import, purchase, and you create contract or import contracts, which are reflecting your entitlement data. This is what you purchase and what you can use given the licenses you got. On the other side, you get your license purchase view. On the other side, you have the hardware and software inventory or usage inventory, which will compute and bring data to inventory. And the idea that compliance position is a comparison that converts this inventory data into consumption data, and that is compared against purchase and procurement data. So I'm talking about quite classical things, but that's good to know what is the process. And maybe another way of showing that, which is a little bit more detailed, is that we have on one side inventory data, which contains the hardware, software, and application usage. This application recognition library, which is the Technopedia engine, is normalizing the data and allowing to recognize applications. On the other side, you have procurement data, which contain sometimes, not always, but often some SKUs that allow to recognize in a faster way what has been acquired. And you create in between the licenses. This is actually a real process that has to be performed. We have some automated license creation processes, but I would say it's good to have control on that. And these licenses will compare the acquired rights with the license consumption. And the product use right library will allow to manage the complex licensing case and even to give you an optimized license position, which is a big focus of the last years. Just one view on the objects that you have in the IT asset management or FlexNet management tool. So the licenses are really the heart of the reactor, I would say, are linked to purchases. The purchase of the line contains 20 rights for a project. Another purchase line contains 50 rights for Visio 2019. So they will be linked to different licenses, of course, and the work in creating licenses and managing software asset management is to make sure that you have your purchase completely imported, that you have your contracts reflected in the tool and linked to the purchase. Contracts can have some end dates which are important for the maintenance of the purchase. And you have in the middle, this license record, which is reading from the product use rights important data that you can get actually if you create the license from a purchase with a SKU. And the work is to have inventory imported on one side, which have recognized applications. And these recognized applications will be analyzed by the license, which reads on one side the purchase and has a number of entitlements. Also computes during the license reconciliation process the deployed applications and convert that into consumptions. So you have a number installed, which is converted into a number consumed, and this is your compliance, what you purchase, what you consume. A last step back to get the full picture. The computer will be linked to evidences, which are the signatures. It could be a file, installer, or WMI evidences. These evidences will be recognized through the application recognition library into applications. Big mystery, and that could be part of today's discussion. You could have, 1,000 signatures on a computer and only 100 recognized applications. So the gap is an important thing. And these applications will be monitored by licenses, which are linked to contracts. It's more for information. And the licenses contain all the intelligence that they take from the product use right to compute and to convert, let's say, to Oracle Database Enterprise 19C installations on 2 virtual machines into the incredible 552 cores consumed because you have a factor of 0.5 on this cluster, and these 2 VMs are split on 2 clusters, which have a total, of 1,020 cores. So that's all this complicated story is automatically managed by the license, which knows how to count, thanks to the product use right library, and which knows how to count things which have been recognized thanks to the ARM. A part I'm not spending too much time on is you can manage the hardware asset of the computers that you have, and the hardware asset will be some extension attributes that will allow to manage the link to contracts, the link to purchase. So you can do a good level of hardware asset management, even if tactically, sometimes, it's good to start with managing inventory, purchases, and compliance. And the core, I would say, value is on the compliance and optimization side. And the other value is in what we could call the configuration management, knowing that many companies have CMDBs and asset management tools. So this is something we do easily with ITAM in Flexera, but that is not the core of the focus. And you will see the process I will describe is really focused on these objects: purchase, contracts, inventory, and making sure that we know what we count and we know what is the position. So that would be one of the last slides, on this big picture. But as a consultant, that's something I always stated. There are many people around software asset management. Many people have an interest on SAM. Many people have, I would say, expectations on SAM. But very few people are really hands-on and know both, the tool, ITAM or Flexera 1 or FlexNet Manager, and the processes, what is the licensing rules, the big picture, and exactly what I'm showing to you today. So the goal of a project and the key to success of a SAM project is to find this person, this team, who will be the license manager, the software asset manager, and this person will coordinate, will provide, data to the consumers. IT has an interest on knowing, what, computers are in Windows 7 that should be migrated to Windows 10 or even to Windows 11 now. Dana, when she renews a contract, needs to understand, how much has been consumed for the licenses, and if we need to expand the number of licenses for the next Microsoft Web. Jim has an interest in understanding, what are the servers that have been deployed, and if you should migrate to Azure these servers and collect the data on Azure to understand the picture on these cloud instances. So everybody has an interest, and the boss, of course, is a user. But in the end, if you don't have one person that coordinates all these stakeholders, which can be, consumers of the information, but also provider of the information, or stakeholders, Derek needs to deploy the agents, and if we have a gap in the agent deployment, or if there is a beacon that does not report data, it's probably that Derek has done a bad job in managing the ports opening on the beacons. So we need, multiple people involved, multiple people consuming the data, providing information, but one key person who is in the middle, which is the license manager. A last thing, maybe before we are more specific on the processes. So making a license position, and here I'm starting the topic of what is it to manage a project. A project, for instance, phase is we're starting our compliance on, let's say, Oracle. The idea that there is a long past. You may have acquired, Oracle 11C database licenses 10 years ago. The goal of a project and the decision to make at the beginning of a project is to consider, the past. And the path could be in the end, let's say the last maintenance renewal for Oracle, because Oracle has a rule that forces you to maintain the Oracle databases or even give up the product that you want to stop paying maintenance for. So that's an all or nothing approach. What you need to do at the beginning of a project is not take the eventually 500 purchases you have made over the last 20 years to Oracle, but take the latest data, which is containing, the current entitlement position. Eventually, you will use the, so I took Office as an example, you will use a current price, even if the data over the time, got multiple costs. And then, the idea that once you have drawn this line in the SAM, you manage week by week, month by month, any additional data that comes in for the vendor you have worked on, typically Microsoft or Oracle. And so you have sort of a snapshot view on the beginning of the project, and then you have an incremental view for the next week, weeks and years, because you are in a run mode from this time on, and that's, I would say, the most manageable way to start a project. I remember things such as Microsoft, license positions. There were something like 20,000 rows in the flat, purchase history of Microsoft. At the time, Microsoft had a MVLS report that contained, a pivot of the entitlements. Typically, using this pivot is useful because you don't want to spend weeks rebuilding the history. I purchased this license in 2012. I took an additional maintenance in 2013, which made the upgrade up to 2014 version for this product. This is just a nightmare. So you need basically to start from a baseline and then manage incrementally the additional things. So this would be the first, advice and the first view I could give between, the project phase. We are starting here and we are building from the past data, and the sort of a run phase where you will manage incrementally the data. So the project phase, first, if you go to this document that I provided a link to, this is called, the short practice guide. You have the link. You will see that it's super detailed, so I'm going to be a little bit fast. But if you go, and go to this document, you will see that everything I'm describing is, explained in details. Okay, and typically, what is SAM, what are the objects, explanation on the roles, and then, the project phase. You need first, to prioritize the publishers. And just that, it sounds stupid, but this is a key, I would say, a key to success. Manage it all will be a failure. A small 20 years experience in SAM means that, yes, you may want to get your inventory data or, raw inventory data for all vendors. But you will start with, Oracle, Microsoft. There is a true-up soon. Oracle, there is a maintenance renewal or a ULA that will finish soon. IBM, because you are moving from a PVU to VPC or whatever. So, but you need to start with the publisher, and basically, you will prioritize by cost of the publisher, by risk. You could have a smaller publisher which is quite interested in knocking on your door for an audit. You will prioritize, and then once you have, the publisher you start with, you will start with, I would say, an inventory step, which is evaluate quickly the situation. And again, you will see there are more details in the document, but basically you need to understand, which are the installed applications for this vendor. Eventually, filter on the commercial installed applications, of course. So the document provides, very detailed things. Go on this screen, filter on commercial, and you get the first view. Okay, I'm starting with, let's say, a less central. I'm starting with Autodesk. Sorry. I will understand, which are the Autodesk applications that have been deployed. Are they commercial? Yeah, most of them are. Maybe the licensing, maybe per device or per user, if it's let's say server version or per concurrent user if it's the server version of AutoCAD. In the end, you get a feeling on what you have today, what are the products that you may expect from your purchase, of course, and what are the recognized, unrecognized, applications. On the, I would say, major vendor, no risk. On the more exotic vendor, that's a very important step. And going back to this Word document, the evaluate quickly situation talks about the unrecognized evidence. And a typical case, could be that you packaged some applications with renaming your IT package them and rename the installation package. And you have in this document a 20-page document which explains step by step how to manage what is a recognition, how does it work, and how to manage the extension to the library, because you can't start and be successful in a project if you are not 100% sure that you have all your applications recognized correctly, or the important ones at least. So this is this step which is described in the document. You need to extend the recognition sometimes, using installer evidence first. And there is a link here to some best practice webinar provided on extending the application recognition. So this is a full step. This is a very important step. And this can be something like a little bit discouraging, because everybody would love that the software asset management tool recognizes everything on everything. This is unfortunately never the case. So you'd better have a top-down approach where you start with the foundations. Am I recognizing the applications? No? Okay. I will spend half a day. We're not talking about weeks of work. I will spend half a day making sure that 100% of my installer evidences are recognized. And eventually check opportunistically, some file evidences for recognition. Once you have done that, you can say, you have evaluated the gaps, you have filled the gaps on inventory collection. You will, as a next step, do the import of the purchase. And again, time is really limited, but you will have more time to read the document. This document explains how to import, what is important, in a purchase. Why eventually, purchase. I'm not sure if I talk about that, but I've never found in my life a purchase tool which was exactly containing the data you need to create purchase orders details and purchase order lines in ITAM. So I explain, how to import from the UI, from an Excel file with a beacon, which is a business adapter, which is an option. And what you need to do is import the in-scope purchase. You could eventually import all your purchase for licenses, making sure that you have the necessary data on the purchase, typically the quantity, one line per product, an end of maintenance, if you have a maintenance which is included in the product, include maintenance, flag. If it's a subscription, of course, the start and the end date for the subscription. And then you will get, good enough data. Is it a maintenance only? Is it a maintenance plus perpetual right, and so on? And once you will have the right information, and you can import the data. An option is to import everything, and you can put flag the purchase to be managed for later. So this is not ignored, but you have a flag to put the purchase in a stage where you will be able to have them back if you want. And once you have your purchase, you will start the license reconciliation process. And again, not the time today, not the time to do a full demo, but this document will, step by step, show you how to create a license, and will explain line by line what is important. This is not rocket science, I would say. The less rocket science approach is when you have the SKU. You just create, from the SKU, and you eventually put a maintenance date, which will help the license taking its rights and the latest version of the applications covered until this date. So this is an approach. Or you can create a license. Actually, if there is no recognized SKU, and then you need to make the big decisions, which are, what is my product that I want to cover? What is the license type? And what is the precise license type that I want to use, and that will contain a lot of attributes that will create the license. And in the end, you get, a license record created, which contains a lot of information. What is the covered application? What is the license type? How you should count the consumption, and so on. And you create one time the license, and then the license will keep monitoring these, new imports, new purchase on one side, new inside software, and so on. So I need to speed up a little bit because I will go a little bit beyond the hour, but the recording will be useful, and even if it's 1 hour 10, let's say. So you import the purchase orders, and then you manage the license reconciliation by creating licenses from the purchase. And then another thing, you can create additional licenses which have no rights for the commercial applications of the vendor which have no purchase. And this is a step that people tend to forget. We have a screen in ITAM or in FlexNet Manager that shows the unlicensed installations. This is a super important thing. It's in the license. Unlicensed applications means, licenses which are not, applications which are not covered by any license. You can find that from the all application screen. But then you have this, unlicensed installation screen, which is very interesting because you may have, licenses which are monitored. So installations which are monitored for a given application, but you may have installations on computers which are outside of the scope. And typically, it will be the case for named user licenses where you have a subscription. So you may have, people with a subscription that have the application, fine, and the license will cover the installation. But you may have other people with still an application installed and no subscription. And then you will have what we call a non-licensed installation. And that's where, one way of sort of keeping this risk, under your eyes is to create some no purchase licenses that typically could be per device. You need to get a feeling on how many issues you have, and that's what you will do. Again, check in this document. There are something like 10 pages on how to create the licenses and how to create these additional licenses that will sort of monitor the under-the-radar installations of applications that you had no purchase for. That's an option. So no entitlement and no license created from the purchase. But also, you may have created a license, and the installation is not in scope of the licenses which are existing, either because the license is scoped. You could have a license for an entity, and it's not covering the installation of the other entity, or because you have this named user subscription. The run phase. The run phase actually is interesting because once you have finished, you spend, let's say, 1 week and a half just on Microsoft. You have your purchase, you import your purchase, you create the licenses, you check that everything gets recognized, you look for, unlicensed installations and create additional licenses. That's it. You check that no installer evidence is unrecognized by Microsoft. It could be either ignored, all these Visual C++ add remove program evidences, which are so useless, these components. But you have, the vendor under control at the end of the project. You may have a conclusion, which is we need more licenses, or we could divest a little bit and purchase less maintenance. And the run phase is this phase where you have created your first license position, but then you want to maintain the accuracy of the data that you have. So the vendor is under control is the goal of this run phase. You need to manage the new events, such as, I have a renewal of my licenses, so that there will be a process to check, how many licenses we need to purchase, and so on, which is, I would say, part of the day-to-day SAM activity. But the compliance activities in the run phase will be, for instance, to import the new purchase once you have renewed your maintenance, eventually partially, and you will need, once, I would say, a month, you will need to import the new data for the vendors in scope. And again, this is very important to say, not everything. The 1, 2, 3, 10 vendors that we have under control, and you keep this, I would say, data up to date. and you need to keep things at a good state. And you will see actually it's not so straightforward, and that's a little bit what will come with the SAM Operations Hub. Big questions are: can I trust my inventory? That's an interesting one, and there are actually many things. Are my inventory import systems tasks successful? You may have, a beacon that fails reporting, or let's say the SCCM inventory that is failing because there is a timeout on the database. These are the type of things which are super important. Otherwise, you get your data, inventory data, that gets, less up to date, and you have less trust in your data. Are my beacon reporting correctly? Are these agents, NDIs, coming correctly through the beacons, or is something blocked? Is my inventory exhaustive? Does vCenter report VMs that are not inventoried? Other big question. That's a big one. Do I have aging inventory? Do I have some merge device? This is a more specific and complex topic, but it could lead to false positive. So you see there are a number of I would say, foundational questions. Do I have the basics that allow me to keep trusting my Microsoft license position? And there are some bigger topics that come, I would say, after in terms of priority, which are more, okay, now I can trust my inventory, which is such a big story that should not be overlooked. Can I, what should I do? Do I have some inventory which is not monitored by licenses? What is my proportion of commercial applications that are monitored by licenses? Are all my purchases processed? Should I, process the new purchase orders because we had a contract renewal? Somebody nicely imported purchase, but the licenses are not linked to them. Are my licenses correctly created? Are there upcoming contract renewal? And are there subscriptions purchased that need renewal? Because this is adding one complexity. You need to more frequently renew these, subscriptions. And all of this is quite a nightmare. At the time, I had 10 questions, which were the 10 commandments of the SAM Manager. How can you do that efficiently? This is all the goal of the coming SAM Operations Hub, which is planned for Q1 2023. This hub will contain, and you will see, the document I shared was written in something like 2014, I think, Managing SAM Operations, the first version at least. And you will see that it already talks about a new way that could be the SAM Manager checklist. And you have all these questions, and you have a number of links to reports that got released actually in the community. And the idea is that we are going to have this unique entry point that will provide on the top some KPIs. Are you performing well? No. Number of failed tasks is one, which is a real risk. This is a red flag. And the idea that we're going to have, just like the SAM Optimization Hub I was showing a little bit earlier, a document, an entry point that gives a summary on top based on KPIs, number of orphan VMs. If you have 4% of orphan VMs, honestly, by experience, it's not a big deal. If you have 15% of orphan VMs in your non-cloud virtual machines, this is a big issue because your Oracle, Windows, and SQL Server consumption could be wrong. So there will be a list of monitored KPIs. There will be a list of reports that will be behind the scene, containing, for instance, virtual machine inventory gaps from vCenter. We know from vCenter which are the not inventory VMs. So this hub will bring a number of new reports that we're going to start creating very soon. Some of them got already created. And an overall, dashboard that will summarize the data and give the explanation and the links. And this is what you will have, which basically maps this SAM Manager checklist. So the tool will help you managing successfully your operations. Okay, so, and sorry, I've been a little bit over time. Thanks for your time. Hopefully you got, a good view on this topic, even if it was a little bit fast. Please access, the resources that I kept showing in the community so that you can spend more time, particularly in this document, which is, 27-page that contains another 27-page document. So this is quite detailed. Let's meet again in the next SAM best practice call, which it doesn't have yet its topic defined. So thank you for your time, and talk to you soon. Goodbye.